My name is Autumn Repass, and I did my research project on teaching prepositions to young learners. I first looked at the history of prepositions and how they originated. Many of the original prepositions were first used in the French and Scandinavian languages. In Middle and Old English, prepositions often had two forms such as along and alongst, or beneath and beneathen. Author Tom Nielsen Lundsgaard introduces 6 linguists that each give us a different explanation of how prepositions originated. Bruckmann believes that prepositions developed from an independent adverb and transformed into a preposition. The next linguist, Millay, agrees with Bruckmann that the preposition did start with an independent adverbial form, but then created a closer relationship with nouns and verbs that syntactically attached to them, creating what we know now as a preposition. Lehmann originally called prepositions postpositions and said that it was the basic word order of the Indo-European language. Lehmann also argues that when particles followed by a noun precede a verb, that there is a structural ambiguity about the noun or verb that the particle once belonged to. Linguist Frederick disagrees with Lehmann's argument by stating that Homeric Greek and the Sanskrit language, which are both Indo-European, do not show clear postpositional structure. Frederick also adds in his research that locative auxiliaries known as preverbs or prepositions were created to remove the function of a verb and show more of a clear and spatial meaning of a word. The next linguist, Hawkins, created the prepositional noun modifier hierarchy. This method is utilized by using 5 noun modifier parameters in a combination with prepositions, in which he extracts 7 strings of co-occurrences, and then the strings mentioned are then broken down into 4 other subtypes that include adjective nouns, clause nouns, and genitive nouns. The last linguist, which is Hawk, believed that prepositions were not yet complete, with the first being that postnominal words were initially given to preverbs, and second that prenominal words were given to adpositions. Did you know that a preposition is not just a preposition? Prepositions are the links to a prepositional phrase, and they are hard to define without another particle because their function is to bring sentences together. There are 5 different types of prepositions: simple and complex, spatial, temporal, and metaphorical. A simple preposition has only one element, whereas a complex has 2 or 3 added elements. Complex prepositions with only 2 elements are typically written with an adverb, adjective, or conjunction as the first word, and then a preposition follows. For example, a simple preposition would be inside, and a complex preposition would be in front of. Spatial prepositions would be at, in, out, across, and away. Temporal prepositions are used to express a certain time or a realm of space. Author Benelhage stated that the link between temporal and spatial prepositions is attributed to the link between those notions both philosophically and physically. The last type of preposition is metaphorical. Given that we already know what a metaphor is, a metaphorical preposition is one that has both spatial and a metaphorical meaning. Although students are taught in elementary school what a preposition is and how to use them, they are not taught how important a preposition is in a sentence and why we do use them. It is necessary that we learn prepositions because many prepositions have more than one usage. The technical word for this is polysemy. An example of two different forms of a preposition is by. The preposition by has a different meaning in the sentence stung by a bee than it does in the sentence in a 2-meter by 2-meter rug. Another example is the preposition out. In the sentence step out of a room, it has a different context than roll out a carpet. In some of the research that I found, I read in the book Language Arts and Literacy for Young Children that is written by Terry Solinger. She explains how children begin to learn about concrete and abstract concepts from birth and throughout their childhood. When children experience concrete concepts, they first recognize people and objects through their senses and physical interaction. And as their vocabulary begins to develop, they are able to label such terms. So the difference in concrete and abstract prepositions is that concrete words can be utilized by physical senses and they are easier for kids to understand. Abstract words do not use physical senses and are not as easy for kids to understand. Concrete words consist of nouns like horse, dog, house, etc. Abstract words are faith, love, happy, and sad. A quote from the book written by Terry Solinger that really stuck out to me was, "Children need situational clues to understand these words in others' speech and need concrete experiences and demonstrations to understand implied meanings." In the research that I conducted, I found that prepositions are hard for English language learners to understand because they have many different meanings not only in the English language but also in their native language. There are 3 strategies that are used to teach prepositions to English language learners, which are traditional, collocation, and prototype. The traditional approach gives the English language learner a grammar lesson where they only learn the prepositions in one given context. The collocation approach teaches students how to chunk the prepositions together rather than teaching all of the 60 to 70 prepositions and what they mean all at one time. For example, instead of teaching a single word, students can be taught the phrasal verbs like to rely on, to wait on, to walk on, to work on, or to pick on. The prototype approach believes that prepositions do have more than one meaning, but one is more dominant than the other, and that is the physical meaning of the preposition. An author that I also studied mentioned that he prefers to use the prototype method over the traditional or collocation approaches. When researching strategies for teaching prepositions to young learners, I found an author by the name of Anna Piquer Perez. She had 2 different methods that she uses known as the on versus off method and the TPR method, which stands for total physical response. The on versus off method tells us that young children can easily learn spatial concepts if they are in a consistent order. This order first includes the preposition in, the preposition on, under, and then follows with the range of next to, beside, between, and then in front to and behind. Also in this method, she teaches the on versus back in a more abstract meaning, such as go back or come on. When using total physical response activities, students use their own bodies to understand where different objects are in relation to them. Methods that can be used include using on as an illustration of something that is on a flat surface, meaning that the teacher would ask the student to complete a physical command like sit the pencil on the desk or take the pencil off the desk. The second method is having students draw, display, or decorate an object which shows a different form of on with different surfaces. The third method is demonstrating the word on by using clothes on a puppet or a doll, which I thought was rather creative. The last method of teaching prepositions that I studied was instructing students with intellectual disabilities. Students with intellectual disabilities often struggle with language delays or impairments, and by using direct instruction, we can improve their understanding of the language and their communication skills. In my research, I found 3 authors who experimented with using direct instruction to teach students with intellectual disabilities. The authors explain that understanding prepositions is important for these type of students because this is the first step for a student with an intellectual disability in order to communicate properly. When using direct instruction with each child, instructors would give examples and non-examples such as, "This pencil is on the desk," or "This pencil is not on the desk." In the experiment, students were able to visually see if a pencil was or was not on the desk. Data was collected with 3 different generalization activities, such as a scavenger hunt, a requesting activity, and giving responses to verbal prompts that include prepositions. The graphs in the article show where each student was at the beginning of the experiment and then where they ranked after being taught the methods of direct instruction. The results of the experiment showed that students learned to use and respond to prepositions as well as maintain all of their skills up to 8 weeks after instruction. In conclusion, teaching prepositions require visual aid and kinesthetic learning activities. All research complied that the methods discussed are the best ways to teach prepositions to young learners of all exceptionalities. I completed my lesson plan on prepositions, and using the whole group instruction and direct instruction for the lesson, the students will learn the definition of a preposition, a list of the most common prepositions, and the different ways that they can be used. In small groups, we will be focusing on the independent practice as the students will be in groups of 4 or 5 and work together to construct a paragraph with the correct prepositions in place. For my direct instruction, I will introduce prepositions to the class with the preposition anchor chart, and this chart will give the students the definition of a preposition and a list of common prepositions. Continuing to instruct on prepositional phrases, the words combined in a sentence to modify or better describe something, and I will explain the 4 parts of a prepositional phrase, which is a preposition, determiner, adjective, noun, or pronoun. I will refer back to the anchor chart for a commonly used and fun trick for the kids to remember, which is most prepositions will make sense in this sentence. The rabbit ran blank the log. For example, the rabbit ran up the log. The rabbit ran on the log. The rabbit ran across the log. All of those are prepositions. For the guided practice, the students will write 2 or 3 sentences on the board, and they will come up and circle the prepositions and underline the prepositional phrases. We will then discuss with each other if it is correct or incorrect. I will give out a worksheet on the 4 parts of a prepositional phrase and place a sheet on the Elmo to go over with the students on the smartboard. I will do the first one with the students and then ask the student for a preposition, determiner, adjective, noun, or pronoun. They will fill in the blanks and read the prepositional phrase aloud. I will allow the students to do the remaining 4 on their own and then review what the students came up with. I will determine if they created their phrases correctly, and if not, discuss what the issue is with the phrase. Students should be able to identify the prepositions as well as the prepositional phrases. For my student assessment, the students will perform a traditional assessment and they will be assessed on their ability to identify prepositional phrases, including the 4 parts: preposition, determiner, adjective, noun, or pronoun. Students will be given a worksheet of 12 sentences and they will underline the prepositional phrase, circle the preposition, and write a D above the determiner, an A above the adjective, and a P or N above the noun or pronoun, and the worksheets will be taken up for a grade.